Hello, welcome to WIN, Championship Trades for Life, a show focused on strengthening the mental fitness of athletes, coaches, and anyone and everyone that works within a team environment on any level. I'm Lee Elias, that's JB Spizzo, and we are joined today by the Chief Executive Officer of Hockey Canada, Tom Renney. Tom's resume includes 8 years as an NHL coach, Memorial Cup championship, and 2 WHL championships during his time with the Kamloops Blazers, a silver medal for Canada in the '94 Winter Olympics in Lillehammer, and 3 gold, 3 silver, and 2 bronze medals from 10 World Championship appearances as a coach. To put it simply, this man is a key influencer in the world of hockey, and we are pleased to have him on WIN today. Tom, welcome to the show.
My pleasure, Lee. Thanks for having me.
Tom, it's so good to see you again. Thanks for everything you do for hockey players and coaches and what you did for me in the past. And it's so good to have you on. So I'm going to just jump right in. And you've coached and managed some of the, best players, best teams in the world. And we often hear of talent versus passion. We're all aware that there's a need for talent in every profession. However, at the end of the day, we know that talent is never enough. Can you explain the necessity of having a passion to raise your talent to the highest level?
Great question, JB, and it's super to see you and chat with you again. Great memories. A real good question. There's always that debate, as to what's most important. The bottom line is you need both to be an effective player in any sense, really. And regardless of the level of your talent, you have to have some. But that's why we teach skill. That's why we make the environment and the rink a destination, is to make sure that we all go there for the right reasons, and that's to enjoy it. Beyond that, I would tell you that I think most important of all, and if we're talking about kind of that competitive level of hockey, it's important to share a purpose, and it's beyond just going to the rink, to play. It's the camaraderie therein. It's the opportunity to learn and understand yourself better, certainly understand your teammates. But I think at the end of the day, and it has to be more than winning. There needs to be a shared purpose. And if you can identify with what that is, and if it's to just have a great year together with your teammates, try to do something extraordinary collectively with your individual contribution, that's great. But you have to identify with that and certainly make it, I think, a part of your value system. If you do that, then I think we arrive where you need to exhibit passion, and that's in your heart. The skill set, the requisites, I guess talent is maybe dormant. Or waiting to burst out, or yet to be determined. Could be a work in progress. But at the end of the day, I think the starting point, quite honestly, is that level of passion, love for the game, the love of the camaraderie, the love of that cold rink, the dressing room, whatever that might be, but also the love of, the pursuit to be more than what you are in that moment. And I really believe that passion, to me, is the number one requisite. Really, if you want to do anything in life that means anything to you. And so the whole idea there is to make sure that the game of hockey as a coach, for your team and your colleagues and those of your staff really means something. And I think to a point that I think forces you to kind of bury your soul a little bit and get into the real neat stuff about, why we're here.
Tom, it's a phenomenal answer. When we work with teams, and when I work with teams specifically, I always ask them, what's the goal? What are we doing here? And, 10 times out of 10, well, we want to win. That's great. Everyone wants to do that. I've never met anybody who doesn't want to win. How do you define winning? And the truth is that word can be defined in so many different ways. Yes, championships and raising trophies is one way to define it, but, if you look at an inner city high school, right, it might be graduating. If you look at an up and coming program, it might be just getting on the map. So defining what the wins are for a season, as you said, and then applying the passion for that, right? We say it on this show. We have said it multiple times. You need 3 things to win. You need talent that's comparable to the league. You need tactics, right? Because great talent can't overcome bad tactics, but you need a team bond as well. You need that extra inch, the thing that you're talking about, the thing that you're going to wrap your mind around, the idea of who we are, why we are, what we are. That's the passion you're talking about 100%.
I agree, Lee. I think it's, what do we want to represent?
Right.
What do we really want to represent in the fortunes of the team, of ourselves individually, and we all want to represent well. We all want to represent what is right in sport. What has a certain ethical accuracy to it, but also with the requisite competitiveness. The desire to be better, the desire to challenge each other. It's okay to want to be the best at something, but if your value system is in place, led by the fuel of the passion, I think you're off to a good start.
Absolutely. And I appreciate you commenting on that right away. And, we'll jump into the full disclosure here. Obviously, if you're watching this episode, Tom has the Hockey Canada logo behind him. We're from America, but here's the truth, right? When I think of Hockey Canada, yes, I obviously think of a proud tradition of winning, but I think of good people. I think of the people that Hockey Canada develops, right? The person. And USA Hockey obviously strives for that as well, right? But at the end of the day, this is not limited to hockey at all, Tom, right? It's the sport is a vehicle for our growth as a human being. And I always say that, especially to the younger coaches listening or the younger athletes, go for the top position you can get in the standings and go for the win, but make sure you are creating valuable citizens for, not just your country, but the world, correct?
Right on the money, Lee. At the end of the day, I can tell you where I'm sitting in my office right now at home, I don't have a trophy in my trophy case. You alluded to a couple of things that many people helped me kind of achieve along the way. My trophies are not gold medals and cups and all that kind of stuff. It's people that are out there that I may have touched, who touched me, believe me. That's the legacy. That's the trophy. That's the Stanley Cup, the World Championship, the Olympic gold medal. That's what it means to me. And I would like to think that, as I mentioned earlier, if you do make the rink a destination, a place where people want to be, where your athletes want to come, you will gain as a coach exponentially, from each and every player that you identify with. And really, at the end of the day, it is about citizenship, and it is about, protecting our population through a code of ethics that only sport, and in this case, especially hockey, can deliver.
Right. That's great. So there's a code in the Army Rangers that says, if the organization is ever comprised of brigands and hooligans, it is to be disbanded. And, I can tell you firsthand from when I, watched Tom coach, his organizations were full of great people. And if the people weren't great, then he'd pull them off to the side and get them right, or give them a chance to get them right, which I think is so important. Tom, you taught me so much about leadership. I know that I came to help your group with leadership, but you probably taught me more. Yeah. And, leadership is a constantly learned subject. And again, I can recall our interactions, whether it was email, text, calls. You always made time for me, which is wonderful. But so you still strive to learn leadership. And so can you explain to, our audience, why that's so necessary?
Well, I just think it's living your full life. It's there's a great saying, when I get to the end of my life, not only do I want to live the length of it, I want to have lived the width of it as well. And you don't do that if you're not willing to learn, to expand, to reach, to stretch. I love learning. I love learning now more than ever before. Maybe because before it was forced on me as a student, but now it's optional. But it's the truth, JB. I just think that we have an opportunity to gain so much by what we watch, what we hear, and what we apply, and the outcome of that application. It might not always be what you want. It might be you step on the banana peel from time to time. I did that in Vancouver, and was maybe the most important thing, that happened not only to me, JB, but to my family, to my friends, to those that I have an opportunity to interact with now. So I think the day we stop learning, as much as it's a cliche, is the day that we stop living. And I think it's critical. I've learned so much in a position as an executive position here at Hockey Canada, by the great people around me, who recognize, I think, a certain level of humility, and my desire to learn, my willingness to learn, my ability to listen to them and invite from them everything they have, to glean off of them, whatever they possibly can. And that allows them, to develop that level of confidence. Just, again, think of what you're doing exponentially by allowing people into your world to teach you. And I don't think we ever stop learning, and I haven't to this day. And you alluded to it, JP, and I would tell you the reciprocal is true. Being around the Army Rangers, being at West Point, and watching you do your work, with the authority that you had, but the respect you showed your troops, was phenomenal. And what it did is it fortified my approach to A, learning, and B, applying those learnings. And I just don't think it ever stops. And as I mentioned, the day that it does, you might want to try something else altogether.
You know, Tom, it's funny. I was asked one time, and I'm going to preface this with, I have no idea how I had the clairvoyancy to answer this question this way, but somebody said to me at a younger age, like, what's the pinnacle of life? Like, I'm going to know that. And I said, well, when you die. And they go, why? And I said, because you can learn to the day you die, right? And who knows, maybe beyond that you can learn too. I just don't have the answer for that right now. But you know, you're so true. And again, I also want to echo your sentiments for our audience. Yeah, when I was in high school, even below that, you know, I didn't want to go most of the time. When I got to college and I was studying something I enjoyed, it got a little more enjoyable. But a few years past college, just like you, I discovered this, like, man, I really love learning. I really love reading and finding new ways and avenues to expand my mind. So that's a great tidbit of advice for the audience there. So Tom, I do want to ask about your coaching a little bit, because I know we have a lot of young coaches that listen to this episode. And one of the challenges of coaching at the highest level is that people think you need NHL experience to be there at the NHL level, and probably at the NFL, NBA, so forth and so on. You didn't have that. And I asked this question because so many coaches are told that's a prerequisite, but it's just simply not true. So I wanted to hear from you, you know, not just the road of how you got there, but really the adversity, the things you had to conquer, and probably the mental strength it took to believe, Nick, no, I can do this and I'm going to do it.
Yeah, you know, a question that's asked a lot, Lee, and obviously a good one. I think that, you know, what you have to have more than anything else, certainly you need the requisite education, you know, coaching education. It can be technical or through personal experience. You know, you certainly need the ability to communicate, you know, and identify with a train of thought and, you know, and forward that to whomever your audience might be. But you need to be skilled with people.
Right.
And I mean that in an innate, authentic, and genuine way. I don't mean, applying the theory of, of human nature, from a book of psychology. As much as that's good, you need to be able to have applied that, and you need to understand that you're not always going to get it right. And that at the same time, when people know that you're authentic in your approach with them, and you're genuine and you're honest, and there's an intersection with your heart and your head, and that's the sweet spot. But you've got to make sure that people know you're speaking, from the right place. And I think that's really critical. I can tell you, I had some decent success, again, due mostly to others giving me that opportunity, until I got to Vancouver. And I coached the Vancouver Canucks in 1996 and 97. I coached 101 games and was fired. I went there probably as a bit of the flavor of the month, one of those guys that shows up every once in a while in the National Hockey League as, being pursued by a number of teams, in which I was, and I thought I had good communication skills. I thought I was really ready.
Right.
And I remember Pat Quinley asking me, Tom, let me just throw something by you. How would you like to serve as my associate coach for a year? And then I'll give you a 4-year contract. And in years 2 through 4, you're the head coach. And I said, Pat, you know what? I'm ready. I'm ready. And I interviewed well and all those types of things. And Pat, as everyone would understand, is just one of the best human beings ever in the game of hockey. Said, okay, well, you know what? I trust your judgment. I like your confidence, and let's go with it. Well, 101 games later, I was gone. And I forgot a couple of things. I had not worked with the NHL athlete before in a season. In short-term competition, World Championships, yeah. But in a season, no. I thought I was a good communicator, but I wasn't listening to the most important resource you have. And JB will tell you, with his troops, that was the most important resource he had. So I wasn't listening. And so consequently, I did everything that I thought was right without the feedback loop, initially it was great. We had 3 great months out of the gate to start with. We're, I think, 4th overall in the National Hockey League. And then the wheels started to wobble a little bit. And they kind of, when you see the head tilt, when they're listening to you, they're going, okay, does he really get this? And quite honestly, Lee, as much as I thought I did, I didn't get it. I didn't understand the NHL athlete. I forgot that they were husbands, that they were parents, that they were adults, that they could call their own shots. You get to the rink on time, you work hard for each other. We'll go win our hockey games, and away we go. I had forgotten that. And I'd come from a program with the old national team in Canada where it was very regimented, and I called the shots, and that was that. And we were good to our players. We enjoyed the heck out of that whole experience. But when I got to the NHL, I became something I wasn't. I wasn't authentic. I wasn't what I needed to be. I wasn't tuned in to the player, to the degree that I needed to be, and I lost my job. And from that point on, became very introspective, and understood that, you know what, Tom, you had all of this going for you. Pat gave you an opportunity to learn a little bit more. And you know what, you thought you were beyond that. Well, you know what, I wasn't. And so the most important, I guess my point is this, make an honest assessment of yourself. Where are you truly, and understand that you're going to mess up, and it's okay. And it's not fatal. And if you don't, I'd like to see how long your career is, to be honest with you, in whatever it is we do, or if you change careers because, you're frustrated, tired, didn't work out, and you're mad. So you move on. So I would tell you that I got better because of Vancouver. I thought I was really good going into Vancouver. I realized I wasn't good enough. And that's a pretty important assessment. And I can remember, Lee, if I could expand on one quick thing.
Yeah, please.
I was speaking at an engagement at the University of Saskatchewan, which is in the middle of the country. And I was at the time VP, it was after Vancouver. So I went back to Hockey Canada, and I was the VP of Hockey Operations. I did a presentation on building a successful program, and did my thing. And at the end of it, there's evaluations that go out to all the participants. There was 150 people from across the country there, and because I was the VP of Hockey Operations, I could ask for the evaluations on all the presentations, but I was only interested in one. And little did I know it at the time until I read one evaluation, and the evaluation, everything was a 4 and a 5, and then there was a 1, and I read it, and the individual identified with this. Good content, but Tom needs to get over Vancouver. And I thought, okay, he's right. I tried to make jokes of it. I inserted it into my presentation a little bit, not necessary, not required, not what people wanted to hear. They wanted to know how to build a successful program. And so from at that point right there, I thought, okay, smarten up, get back to who you are, what you love. It's all about people. It's about fortifying relationships. It's about moving forward yourself and putting yourself in a position to continue to gain confidence, to stretch and reach further than you ever have. And it wasn't long after that I was the head coach of the New York Rangers.
Yeah, and go ahead, JB.
No, that's just so amazing. And I remember one of the things that, Tom taught me was when situations like that happen, get mad, get over it, and get on with it. And those are things. And I just love, Tom, how you did that self-evaluation of ourselves, right? You did that and you took it, because sometimes, these changes happen, whether it's business or sports. It's tough to take. You sit back and you're mad, you're upset, you can't understand it. But when you take it, look at it from a, the bird's eye view, and you say, and what did you do? You said, I'm going to make myself better. And that's exactly what you did. Tom, I always watched you, and, I'm kind of this, you talk about being authentic, I'm a cheerleader. I'm kind of that, break glass kind of guy. And what I loved about your leadership, you had this stoic, no panic attribute about you. In fact, I've watched you bring calm to the chaos. And so when you're talking about these leadership styles and being authentic, what are those core principles that have served you well?
Thanks, JB. I would tell you that we're borrowing the moment. We don't own it. We're borrowing the moment. So what do you want to leave behind? How do you want to impact people in that moment, in that hour, in that day, whatever? What do you want to leave behind? And I never wanted to leave behind a yeller and a screamer. I never wanted to leave behind someone that came unglued because a tactic didn't work. I never wanted to be that guy that yelled and embarrassed players on the bench or in the dressing room, for that matter. But I always thought to myself, JB, that as a coach or as a leader, and you two guys with this great show, you're the source of a lot of things. You guys are the source of information, for sure. but you're also the source of preparation, organization, context. You're the source of emotional control, as much as your show allows, to be demonstrative. And I think that's great. You want to be all of those things. So as a coach, you're the source of many, many things. You're the source of accountability. You're the source of discipline. You're the source of the right message, body language, all of those things. And if you want your team to have that level of poise, but share a deep keel commitment, then you've got to demonstrate that. So be organized, be prepared, be ready, be on your game, be interactive, be demonstrative, show good timing, know when, where, and how to insert yourself, whether it's in the dressing room, on the bench, in practice or whatever. There's sort of an intuition that's required there as well. And, you don't get that without experience. I'm an imperfect person coaching imperfect people in probably the fastest game played on earth. And in our minds, I'm sure the most fun. So why would I convolute that by adding to the disarray? It's hard enough as it is, but what I do bring is experience. And the Vancouver experience was important. My national team stuff was important. My international stuff was important. I got to New York. I knew where Jaromir Jagr lived. I think I might have been within blocks of his house at one point in time because of my international experience. So it's those types of things that just give you that level of calm that the players appreciate. It's hard enough playing, at the highest level you can. And so why would I convolute that? And at the end of the day, it's their bench, it's their dressing room. I'm borrowing it.
I love it, Tom. Tom, this next section of this show is going to be very interesting to me because it's almost a full circle situation. You've kind of been alluding to it. So I went to college up in northern New Jersey during the time you were coaching the New York Rangers, right? Mm-hmm. Now, I got to explain this to the audience because this is kind of a little bit funny. Now, I was born and raised in Philadelphia. So, I'm a hockey fan first. Hockey's my thing. But, obviously grew up a Flyers fan. So here I am up in northern New Jersey. And there's this team that you just can't help but like, right? And this New York Rangers team, you just love them. You just like them. And Flyers fans are going to crucify me for this. But I'm telling you, like the teams you were coaching they had to have been some of the most likable New York Ranger teams in my entire lifetime. So what I want to do here is I want to kind of parallel my life with your time there and draw out some life lessons from some of the situations that happened during your time there. Not to focus too much on the things that happened, but what I saw from it. And the first one I want to bring up, and I was telling JB this before the show, because I remember where I was when this situation was happening, right? And almost every hockey fan that lived during the time period is going to remember Merrick Malik's between the legs shootout, game-winning goal in what was at the time the longest shootout in NHL history.
And the hand wave.
Hand wave. It wasn't even just a hand wave. He just put his hand up, just like, are you not impressed? Right? It was what is those things? And look, if you haven't seen it, just look up Merrick Malik shootout goal. It's a famous moment. John Davidson has. I'll never forget that. Right. And this is where I want to go with this. Right. Because after that, I remember, I was playing college hockey at the time, and we all tried to do that move, and be creative. And that's where I want to focus. Right. The creativity of that was the first time we'd ever seen really in my life some outside the box goal, and the shootout kind of made that. So what is it? How important is it for you to ensure that all players within your massive program, Hockey Canada and beyond, right, find that creativity? Because some of the things we find, and we know this in our interviews and from talking to people, is that there's a lot of coaches of it's just X's and O's and do it. Even with development models, creativity is one of the most important parts of this game, and enabling your players, and this is in all sport, to be creative is part of the coaching process. But like you said earlier, I wrote this down. You said where the heart and the head meet, that's the sweet spot. There is some of that with creativity as well. You can't just go out and do whatever you want. But how do you approach that in your position to help coaches and players be more creative?
Invite it. Just invite it. I think to stifle creativity and imagination and sort of that inventive play, if you're playing competitive hockey, to me, you're giving it the advantage back to the defender. So the hardest thing to defend, Lee, as you would know, and JB too, is someone's creativity when it comes to sport and athletics in general. I think of the great players that I've had, and they were deadly one-on-one, or they were dead. Pavel Datsyuk, for example, in Detroit, was probably the most imaginative, creative player I'd ever seen defensively, if you can believe that.
Wow. Yeah.
Defensively.
Yeah.
You know, he would steer things, he would navigate, he would be like a shark, and he'd turn things to where he was able to collaborate then with a teammate, you know, or the player that he might have been sort of had his eye on because he anticipates where the puck is going to go. You know, he was creative in terms of dictating the terms, you know, defensively, for gosh sakes. You know, it's hard to believe when you think about creativity and imagination from the offensive side of the puck. You know, you're taking the pen away from the author. You
That's a
know,
great
and you're
way
not
to
an
look at
author.
it.
You don't have a pen in your hand or a laptop in front of you, you know. So I think we have to encourage that because number one, I think again, from the competitive level, it just adds another layer, you know, to your attack, for example, you know, and who's going to stifle that, who's going to want to, and it provides that opportunity for the player, you know, to continue to gain confidence, feel good, try even more.
Right.
You know, and his teammates to have another level of respect for him and you for allowing that, but also providing teammates the opportunity to do the same thing. We are so programmed. And, you know, there was a time where we're so linear in how we decided to play the game, east, west, and regrouping and counterattacks was foreign. While 1972 and the Canada-Russia series, for example, kind of woke everybody up.
Right.
And, you know, and with that level of creativity and an opportunity to, you know, to do the extraordinary thing. So I certainly see that. And I think too, what it does for young players, whether it's youth hockey league, recreation hockey, you know, community hockey, whatever, it just helps breed confidence.
Right.
You know, and if you're going to be successful in life, you have to have had those little wins along the way where, you know, someone else had faith in you to try something, you know, and it was okay. And if it didn't work, try it again. You know, and if it didn't work, you know, try it again. Why don't you try this too and just see what that looks like in combination? You know, and to have, you know, to have that endorsement, you know, to have the advocate of a coach, you know, or a leader that cherishes that creativity, I think is something that serves people well for a lifetime, not just in the game of hockey, but you know, for me, as I've said, you know, again, from a competitive point of view, if you stifle creativity, you're handing the win over to the opponent.
I love that you said that. And to follow it up, I'll say a few things. You know, we have a stigma when it comes to fandom. And actually, just to give everybody context to what Tom is talking about, Pavel Datsyuk, who he mentioned, is known as one of the greatest offensive players in the history of the NHL. We called him the Magic Man for a reason. He's saying he was just as creative on defense. So just to give context to anybody here who's not a hockey fan. And I'm going to double down on the non-hockey fans here and tell a quick story about this too. I had the opportunity to interview Lou Vero. And Lou kind of taught me something that, you know, when we grow up, especially if you grew up in Lou's time, USA Hockey and the USSR did not get along at that time, right? And if you grew up here, you're probably not a fan of the Soviet Union, so forth. I'm using the word fan on purpose. But when you're in the game, when you're part of the game, you don't have the ability to just hate the other side. And what Lou taught me was he wanted to learn. So he called up Anatoly Tarasov. And for those, again, who aren't hockey fans, he's the godfather of Russian hockey and really a very creative human being. And the two became friends. And what Lou learned from Tarasov, by the way, who was in the strictest time period of the Soviet Union, was how to be creative, how not hold his players back. And I learned in that moment, Tom, that you're looking at a country in the USSR, again, the strictest of all time. And the way they treated their players was unbelievably strict. Here's the leader of that country's hockey program saying, no, you have to be creative. Thus proving when they were in the rink together, that was still their safe place. But I had to bring that up because a lot of coaches have this kind of wrong mentality of can't learn from anybody else. It has to be this way. Can't let them be creative. I think all young coaches, myself included, and I really appreciate you making yourself so vulnerable early in the episode. I micromanaged everything when I started coaching. I knew the answer. I had to do everything. Absolutely the wrong approach. I was completely strangling my players, and I didn't realize it. And as I got older, that changed. So let me weave this into another question. I love to tell these stories because you're affirming them and they make so much sense. Right. Another player that I grew up idolizing was Jaromir Jagr. And I remember watching him thinking, man, when he's out there, everyone's playing his game. It's like they're not playing hockey. They're playing Jagr's game. He was the most creative player. I mean, still is technically, right? Just a little bit older now. He's almost 50. But his ability to be creative on the ice was like something I've never seen, whether it was Pittsburgh, the Rangers, the 10 other teams he played for after that. I just want to know what your standpoint was. And I know JB speaks very highly of him as well. But I mean, Jaromir Jagr's ability to be creative within the game was unparalleled, correct?
It really was. His presence was extraordinary. I don't know. Off the top of my head, I can't think of anyone with a presence on the ice like Jaromir. Can you imagine him sitting beside him in the dressing room or on the bench?
No.
But I can tell you that Jaromir was a heck of a human being. Is a heck of a human being. I can tell you that when you take the time to build trust, with your players, and it's not always, right out of the gate. It takes a little time. But as I mentioned earlier, I coached international hockey quite a bit, and I coached against Jaromir in a couple of World Championships. So I was able to relate to his hometown and the Czech Republic in general. But we really got to know each other, and it didn't take long. And it's not like I spent hours with the guy every day. It might have been 15 minutes, might have been 5, might have been an hour. But the bottom line is that we were able to, we gave each other permission to share each other. It was okay. And so with that, just real honest conversations, a real trust with each other. We talk. Jaromir was pretty devout Christian, and and we would talk about hockey for 10 minutes, and then we talk religion for half an hour. Okay, well, how many coaches in the NHL spend time with their players talking about religion? I would say more than we might think, but certainly those very personal feelings deep inside someone, I think that happens all the time. But we talk about everything. And so there was a real common bond there. But what I did with Jaromir is I really respected what he had done in the game.
Right.
And it wasn't, okay, now you're here in New York and now you're going to do it our way. No, Jaromir, thanks for committing to New York. How do you like to do things? What works for you? What doesn't work for you? And if you remember, Lee, and you probably do, and JB would, Jaromir did not want to take the shootout. He did not want to shoot a shot in the shootout.
And he took hell for not wanting to do that too from the press. But
and so did I.
Right. Yeah, that's right.
Because I didn't put him out there instead of that. But you know what? I didn't want to embarrass him.
Right.
He knew he was not good at it. If you remember too, we went our first year without naming a captain. Jaromir was going to be our captain. Mm-hmm. And I told him, you know what, Jaromir, there's going to be 3 A's. You'll be one of them. And, let's talk about this in the off season. I don't need to throw you to the wolves in New York here right out of the gate. And he thanked me.
Right.
And, just that level of insight, and recognizing that I think we treated our team the same way, our entire coaching staff and our Ranger staff. I think we really, really worked hard to respect our players, understand what they have done, understand what they brought, and really help them understand where we could go together. Because of that respect for history and the achievements they've had, and even rookies, for example. But I can tell you, Lee, years and years afterwards, when I bump into various players that I coach, they would say, and this is sort of that Stanley Cup or the gold medal or the World Championship for me. Right. They would say, Tom, that's the best year of hockey I ever had. Mm-hmm. Right. And that was our first year in New York, and where we did something nobody expected us to do, and that was finished whenever 6th or 7th or whatever it was, instead of 28th.
Yeah, you were picked to finish last and made the playoffs, and you did that amazing team building event and then just took it to the next level. And I'll just caveat on one thing. And I've told the story before, when Jaromir Jagr was in Florida, he knew that, interaction with fans there was necessary. Because it's Florida, and we had our season ticket holder night where they could come and players would sit and sign autographs, and he just got over the flu, Tom, and the sports information director said, "Oh, you only have to stay here an hour," and he goes, "No, I'll stay here till the last person's done." Yeah, and he was taking selfies with kids, he was signing autographs because he knew the importance of that. And he could have just stayed an hour and left, but he didn't. He stayed like 4.5 hours. And that's just the importance of that leadership piece. So back to you, Lee.
JB, one of the common threads, Tom, that we get on this show is really when you look at great athletes, it's not true of every single one of them, but most top level athletes are also good people, right? Or they have some kind of character quality to them that's also at a professional level, right? It's not just limited to their talent. And whether you're a young coach or a young player, you have to know that the mixture that makes a professional athlete or even a high level athlete, doesn't have to be professional, the type of person you are, the character that you show is part of that mixture. If you don't have that piece, you're not going to go very far. And if you do, you're going to have problems, because most of the people at that level are going to have that as well. So Tom, another player who had that quality, and again, back to the, this is your life kind of little merger thing that I'm doing here.
Yep.
And I this is a player, again, remember the moment when it happened. I was watching in my dorm room when Kevin Weeks got injured, and he was the starting goaltender, and this young kid that nobody could pronounce his last name, Henrik Lundqvist, comes into net. And that was to be the start of one of the greatest NHL goalie careers in history. He has just retired this year after having open heart surgery, trying to come back from this, God bless him. But this is how I want to phrase the question, because this is not about just Henrik Lundqvist. It's, what did you see in him that inspired you to see his ability, to trust in him, aside from the fact that obviously you had to put somebody in, but you decided to keep going with him, right? So how did you see that? How do other coaches see that? Kevin Weeks, who JB knows as well, is a tremendous human being, right? How did you handle that side of it? Because he was incredibly supportive, it seems like, and move forward with that.
Yeah, great question. And thanks for referencing Weeksy. This doesn't happen without this guy having his head on and recognizing the moment, and dealing with it as an absolute pro, but as a real good human being. All of these things just kind of lead into maybe upbringing, those influencers that you had in your life growing up, whatever the case may be. And Kevin was stellar in all of this and continued to play for us, but Henrik was the guy. I can tell you that relationship was important. Those two, right. Kevin could have destroyed this whole career, in our season. He chose not to do that. He chose to be a teammate, and he chose to defer to a young guy whose time had come, who he would be ready for should the opportunity present itself back, and he would run with it for as long as he could. But he was an absolute pro, and that needs to be said. I would tell you, Lee, JB, that Henrik had a maturity about him beyond his years. I'd had the opportunity to watch him play, I think it was the under-20 World Junior Championship in Czech Republic a few years earlier. He was the number one goaltender in the tournament. But he was level-headed, he was mature, he was competitive. He was full of second and third effort, not a one-off. He was technically very good, but a young goaltender, so you can appreciate a little erratic. They're still learning the trade. But what I saw as much as anything was his respect for the game, respect for everyone playing it, from officials to coaches to players on the ice to those in the concession, to the Zamboni driver. I witnessed all of that, and I can say that firsthand because we had a couple of development camps in successive years in Calgary, as a matter of fact, where we brought the entire the youth, I guess the future of the Rangers, to Calgary. And Henrik came 2 years in a row from Sweden,
right,
and participated. So I got down deep, and got to recognize that. And then, and I have to make this real clear, there was a combination of people that can't be overlooked in New York. One of them is Henrik. The other is not Tom Renney, but Benoit Allaire. And Benoit Allaire is the goaltending coach in New York, as he still is, has done an awful lot for Henrik's career. I had it suggested to me, has an assistant coach ever been inducted into the Hockey Hall of Fame, and would you ever consider Benoit Allaire? I sit on the board of directors of the Hockey Hall of Fame here, and yes, I would. But Benoit Allaire gave me every reason to recognize and appreciate all that I saw and felt in Henrik, with the perception or the context that only a goaltending coach could have, and one of the best in the world and one of the best of all time. And right then and there, Lee, I just said to myself, we can run with this kid. We can run with this kid. His time has come. He's not he'll be a rookie for a week.
He was.
And then after that, he's not. And that's exactly how it turned out.
Wow. I just, Tom, I just love that. Obviously I know Kevin pretty well, and, got to work with Henrik there, and it's all part of that. And it ties right into my next question for you. It's about mentorship. And and you said it, you need experience. And sometimes young coaches, young executives, they want to get to that next level. And I keep telling them, that's great, keep climbing, but there's no shortcut for that experience. So sometimes you have to go through these peaks and valleys. You have to ride the wave. Yeah. And I'm just going to start with a personal story. And I haven't even told Lee this story, but so Lee, when I was in Afghanistan in 2008, I was a sergeant major. So I was a senior person on my team. And I didn't really have anybody, and I was going through some struggles. It was difficult. And I remember it was the 1st of July. I remember it like it was yesterday. I was in full kit. I had to go out on combat patrol. I came out of my little, we had these containers that we slept in. So I came out of my little container and I took a knee and I had my helmet off and I'm like, I'm not going to make it. I'm not going to make it 6 more months. I'm exhausted. And, I still have to put the face on and show everybody. And I remember I was emailing back and forth to Tom, and, Tom was obviously coaching and he was busy, but he always emailed me back, and he emailed me something and I cut it out and I stuck it on the windshield of my gun truck, and it said, and I basically said, Tom, I'm not going to make it 6 more months. I don't know how I'm going to do this. And here I was, a senior person. Right. And he wrote back this little statement that said, impossible is not a fact. It's an opinion, usually coming from those that have never measured themselves in the face of adversity. And I cut that out. I put it on my gun truck. And then, of course, I have it memorized. And I used it as, my mantra to go forward. And it's funny because the first 6 months of my deployment were like tick, 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 tick. And after I read that, next thing you know, it was December and I was getting ready to come home. And so I think, Tom, we continue to talk about like finding mentors and mentoring others, whether in your field or out of your field. And I just think that's so important. And you did that for me, and I was blessed to have it. But can you just talk about the importance of mentorship and when you rise to these levels of how you should find somebody to mentor?
Oh boy, great topic. Thanks for sharing that story. It makes me emotional, but I hear you, brother. Mentorship's critical. The first thing I would say, JB, is whatever you do as a potential mentor, like be one, because you know what? The mentee becomes the mentor. And you did that for me.
Thank you.
You did that for me, brother, because I could understand where you were. I felt it. I hurt for you. I didn't have a whole lot of experience with the military, other than West Point, where you kicked the crap out of us for a couple, two training camps in a row. But what you did is by making that connection that we had, I believe me, I learned more from you, on how to knuckle down, because I had to respond. On your behalf, and in so doing, I had to think my way through this, and what do I offer a sergeant major, with the Army Rangers in Afghanistan, fighting for his life and ours, even as a Canadian. Let's not underestimate that. I thought, what do I do? And so I started to collate some thoughts or whatever, and shared that with you. And by how you kind of reciprocated how it had gone for you beyond that, JB, there's another Stanley Cup. There's another gold medal. There's a world champ. Great. I love hockey. I love winning. It's beautiful. I love people, and I love to be a part of growth, mine for sure, and others. And so I would only say the mentee can become the mentor. But whatever you do, mentorship is huge. We've all had them. We still have them, I'm sure. And the beauty of it is it's the life experience that you take far beyond the field of play. Or the battlefield or whatever. And now you have an opportunity to pay it forward, by again, imperfect person, teaching, coaching, leading imperfect people takes experience. And mentorship is not a bunch of X's and O's. It's not that. It's not a bunch of theory. As much as that is helpful, and there's a certain strategy, and a logistical strategy involved with all of this. At the end of the day, there's that intersection again, the heart and the head. And boy, when you have that relationship, JB, we've been staying in touch with each other for a long, long time.
Yeah.
A long time. And there's a reason why. the connectivity is important to me, and it always will be. And I think that, there's two winners here immediately. And then again, exponentially, what we decide to share and push forward as mentors and even mentees ourselves is equally as important. So I would stress with any young coach, look for the right values in a mentor. It's not always about winning. A mentor doesn't have to have been a world champion, or anything like that, but they have to have had some experiences that you can identify with. Maybe they've struggled, the same way you might be right now, and so you've got to research that, and don't go always to the sexy one. Go to people that have made it, that have achieved in different ways by how they've grown people, how they may have grown programs, how they handle certain very tough situations. It's one thing to call John Cooper. Coop, you're the Stanley Cup champion. Can I bug you for half an hour? Yeah, sure. What do you need? And we talk and everything's good. Okay, but Coop, when you didn't win a couple of years ago and you kind of stepped on the banana peel and you came up short, can you tell me about that? Love to. And that's mentorship. So all I can do is encourage your listeners to certainly seek out a mentor. And if you really want to feel good, be a mentee.
Thank you. Awesome. Amazing. For me, it was, and just hearing you, say the story again, you took time in that answer, and that's what a lot of people don't do. They don't, just, hey, suck it up, drive on, you'll be okay. Right. No, that wasn't it. You gave something, so specific to me back then, 2008. I still have it memorized today. I'll never forget it. And it became, it became something that helped continue to forge my foundation. I think that's so important. Wonderful answer. I love it. It's beautiful.
I want to bring up something to both of you that I think this episode has championed, no pun intended. You both have this infectious belief in people. And that's something that is really, really lacking today. Now, look, we've been through something, obviously, with the pandemic over the last couple of years. People are on edge. I get it. But there is, in at least North America, I find there's a lack of belief in each other now. And never in my life, I should say, has there been a time when we need to try and find a way to come back together. And I'll tell you what you both are doing that I think a lot of people miss. And you've both done it on this episode. And it's you've been willing to make yourself vulnerable and tell these stories of, I don't want to call it failure, just adversity, right? And to bring it up. Tom, you did this when you talked about the Vancouver Canucks, right? JB, you just talked about this. For those of you listening don't know, JB is a warrior. I mean, he classifies the word warrior. And here he is saying he was having a hard time in the field of battle. He made himself vulnerable to Tom. Tom answered him back. We don't do that enough, all right? All the greatest mentors I've had in my life have told me you have to be willing to do that. And as I've gotten older, I've learned to do that too. And, Tom, I'm going to form this into a question too. Sure. I started coaching collegiate hockey at 22, which is stupidly young, for lack of a better word there. And I remember I had all the right tactics. I had all the right mentality, even morally, like trust and accountability. And I demanded trust, but I wasn't willing to give it out as easy as I demanded it. And I demanded teamwork, but I micromanaged everyone, right? And we won a lot of games, but I ended up, strangling, like I said, the life out of that team a little bit. And we have good relationships today. I still hear from those players today, but later on in my life, and this is what's funny. I'll make you smile here. During the time I was coaching, you were still in New York. And I remember, this is me at that young age. That guy has got to get more energy. Tom Renney has no energy and he's just not exciting enough. And how are they going to win if he's not yelling at him every game? I'm bringing that up because it's a common mistake from both fans and young coaches. Okay. There is no coach in the world that can rev it up to 100% of the time and succeed. It's not going to happen. In fact, it's the coaches who choose when to do that, in my opinion, that typically end up doing well. And what's funny, Tom, and again, this is rounding out the story. I ended up coaching pro in Europe years later. And this happened. I'm in a championship game. All right. And there's 10,000 people screaming, and we're playing against another team where the country's greatest players on the other team. And we were winning 4-2 in the second period. And I remember they scored. And this is where the questions are going to come from, I promise. For the briefest of moments, the score, we're winning 4-3. A seed of doubt planted in my head for the first time in that game of, oh no, I played it out. They're going to get another goal. They're going to go ahead. And for whatever reason, I kind of attribute this back to watching you. I got really present really quick. I got right to the present moment. And I said to myself, it wasn't even about the score. It was, man, how amazing is it that I'm on this bench right now? There's 10,000 people here and I'm coaching a championship game. Not that the outcome doesn't matter, but wow, how awesome is this? All the fear, all the doubt immediately went away. We won the game, just so everybody knows, because people can ask me that, although it doesn't really matter. We won the game, won the championship, but that was the most present I've ever been. And it was from that moment that I learned about present moment awareness, which I think is maybe one of the biggest keys to life, not just coaching, for those of you listening, right? And I think you practice that better than most coaches. And I'm rounding this out because I remember just like, why won't Renney charge these guys up? And it's funny because Jagr's kind of like that too. You mentioned it. So I just wanted to get your thoughts on present moment awareness, how you practice that, the mental side of that, and how important that is to be present with your players, with your family, and with your situations in life.
Boy, that's a really heck of a story, and I'm a little concerned, Lee, with how we can create a movement with one click of our device, good or bad,
right.
With no context, with no personality behind it, with no person owning it. That kind of concerns me. So your remarks about being together again and being inclusive of each other and in the company of each other is more relevant now than ever before. And just watch what happens in the next few years with our mental health issues,
right.
with physical issues, spiritual issues, whatever it is you want to attach yourself to. The one thing that's happened here is that we have sacrificed our spirit, and what you were able to do in Europe was get yourself back to to the very reason, the real core of the opportunity that you had there, and how to enjoy it in the most stressful moment of all.
It was.
For sure.
It really was.
But you did the right thing, but you also had reference points, of where that's worked for yourself, I'm sure, and coaches you had, and other experiences you've had, in life. So you've got that experience for sure. But I can't tell you how important it is to just, appreciate where you are in the moment, understand it's a gift. We're not splitting the atom. We're in this case, we're playing a game. We want these players to enjoy being in our company as coaches as much as I do in theirs as players. And I can tell you there's, you'll maximize your people potential. Bottom line is you'll maximize your people potential. If you're the distraction on the bench,
right.
As opposed to the other team, big problem. And it's only a matter of time before you self-destruct, and that gets nothing for anyone. I can tell you one of the really neat compliments I've gotten along the way from a number of NHL officials is that, and it's happened maybe 5 or 6 times with different guys that I've been at speaking engagements with, and maybe they're trying to just make me feel better because I didn't win enough, but they all said, that, Tom was, in my tenure in the NHL as an official, Tom was by far and away the best coach to work with. And probably because I didn't yell and scream at them. And some would want to say, Renney, why don't you go after the referee? He's wrong. Da, da, da. And I get that, believe me, under my breath. And maybe occasionally I did. The players need to know you're with them. You're not just, standing back there, doing nothing. They need to know that. But there is a way to go about that and maintain everybody's self-respect, and honor the moment. And so I think, Lee, it just takes practice. And what a great opportunity for you to be in that moment as a coach, on the verge of winning a championship, getting ready to be, to come unglued, and all of a sudden you kind of center yourself and kind of flow from there. And the players feel that, and they say, okay, well, coach has got this. No reason why we can't, and away they go, and that, I think the same works just in life. There's no question, even in my current position, they need to know, and it doesn't mean that, I'm not scrambling from time to time, but I lean on the resources, my staff around me, which is outstanding. That's, you're in it together. I can recall, numbers of times throughout my career, Lee, where, coach, and you'll be able to relate to this, but it's a great feeling when the coach, you've done your pregame work. Everybody knows who they're, you're going out against so-and-so. Here's our matchup here. Here's our matchup here. Or we're rolling. Don't worry about it. We're just going. But there's not a better feeling in the world than standing back and having the best seat in the house, because everybody knows who's up, when, where, how, and why.
Right.
And all you're doing is watching. It's unreal.
Yeah.
It's an unreal feeling. It's their game. It's their team. It's their bench. It's their dressing room. It's their ice surface. Go play. And it didn't happen enough, but it's an unbelievable feeling.
When I mentor coaches, I tell them, if we do this right, we won't be doing much coaching at the end of the season.
You're right, on Lee.
And I was going to throw this to you, JB, because I'm sure in the military, it's very similar.
Well, it's all a part of, and leaders need to bring calm to the chaos.
Right.
And they need to speak clearly. And I love it that you're not cursing out officials, that sort of thing. It gets nowhere. There's no tactical value.
It gets
in
on
that.
TV.
Right. Of course, the players know if you're with them, but that's why, at West Point, we teach the young officers, bring calm to the chaos. There's enough other stuff going on. Bring calm to the chaos. Speak clearly on the radio. Give clear direction, because that's exactly what they're looking for out of a leader. Tom, you touched on it just a little bit, and I just think it's so important, and it's becoming more in sports and life, is this mental health fitness. I know your daughter's big into it. She's helping a ton of players, but that whole shift of not just being physically fit. We need to be mentally fit. We need to be emotionally fit. We need to be spiritually fit. I think that's so important to do all those and to talk about it openly. You talked about Jagr and his Christian faith. Like in Florida, we gave him 2 lockers because he had one locker that was all of his Christianity items that were there. And I loved it. And it was great. It was great. And of course, no one said anything because of Jaromir, but I just think it's so important that, players can have this healthy life, and they can talk about those things, and they can share issues with others or with a trusted agent or a mentor. Maybe you could just talk a little bit about the importance of being mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually.
Yeah, boy, that's deep, isn't it? But it's only as deep as we want to make it if we turn a blind eye to it. Mm-hmm. So we can't do that. I would tell you that what Jaromir did in Florida and New York with when we were together was give his teammates license to be themselves. Mm-hmm. It's okay. You be who you are. I'm going to be who I am. And we're going to go out there and we're going to do something extraordinary tonight together. And so that's important. And, we talked about authenticity and being vulnerable, Lee, as you mentioned earlier. It's okay. It's important. It's real. It's very real. And it's important to make sure that your environment, is sort of driven by a value system, as a team, as a group trying to pursue something special together. There needs to be a value system there that's shared, and we need to value each other's opinion, each other's flaws, each other's strengths, of course. But we also have to have that ability to talk about those things and identify, what are our core values as a team, as an organization. And we've done it every single time. We did it at Hockey Canada when I got here. And what's important to you, and what is going to define us? Not the media, not social media, not we are going to define us, and what defines us. And it's interesting, when we were talking earlier, Lee, about, the X's and O's of the game and whatnot, and very linear, et cetera, et cetera. That's all well and good. But at the end of the day, what the players want is to be coached from principles. They don't need, when the puck goes here, do that. When we go here, you do that. And when it goes over here, we're going to do that. What we need to know is that we're going to play fast. We're going to make sure that we're fresh. We're going to make sure that we leave the next line something good to work with. In other words, what did we do with the puck on a line change? We're going to make sure that our opponent, is under duress as much as we possibly can, with and without the puck. So principles. And I think that's the same thing, under the circumstance of just of healthy participation in all those domains you talked about, JB, is that it's okay. and B, it's important to be able to understand the value of your teammates in those circumstances if they happen to be the ones struggling. Understand the cues. Understand that we're in this together. I can tell you, I actually did talk to my daughter about this years ago. There's 6 players that I've had that came to me. Now they're in the National Hockey League and they're making a living, and a good living for whatever that window might be, and they came to the coach to tell the coach, I'm having trouble. You may not have known this before, but I take such and such to help me with depression, or anxiety, or whatever. Now, can you imagine what value system would need to be in place with the coach, developed by the players, where a player is going to come up in a professional hockey league, the highest league in the world, and say, Coach, I got a bit of a problem here. I think I need to talk to you about. Well, trust, big time. Attention to the value system because you believe in it, right? And no judgment.
Absolutely.
No judgment. And that's how you maximize people's potential. And I think that the game is a game for that very short period of time that you get to play. The real game we play is after that. And what are you going to contribute? What did you learn? What did you leave behind? How did you impact people? How did they impact you? How did you treat them? When Henrik Lundqvist says and I think, I don't know if you remember Alan Creda from, he would have been working for the Times in New York at the time there, JB, he sent me a quick quote from Henrik. And he said, I'll never forget my time with Tom Renney. He said, we had good teams. We played well. We played hard. But he said, what Tom Renney taught me was more about life than anything else. And he said, I'm very grateful for that. First of all, who says that?
Right.
Tells you a little bit about the measure of the man. And, I don't know how many coaches would look at that and say, wow, but I did.
That's a phenomenal answer, Tom.
That's life-changing. That says it all right there. When you take somebody has that opinion and value in what you did to touch them. And I think sometimes you're exactly right. We worry about money and medals and trophies and all this other stuff. And at the end of the day, it's just hardware, but it's the lives that you've affected that you've touched, like the story I said, and even what Henrik said, and all the other players that you've assisted along the way, those touch points. Those are the life-changing events. And that's what, if you're a young coach or if you're an up and coming executive, that's how you're remembered right there. So
I agree completely.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I was going to go ahead, Tom. Sorry.
No, that's your legacy, Lee. That's all. Go ahead, buddy.
I was going to tell another story, but I actually can't think of a better place to stop this episode and end it. There's phenomenal information. I'll tell you right now that I'm surrounded by pictures of my family. Those are my trophies, but this podcast, this episode is up there right now with that. And again, to both of you for sharing all that information, and to our audience, I hope you took a lot away from it, because it's only been an hour, but it was a full masterclass on not just winning and coaching, but life. And what you should be looking at is maybe the prioritization of effort, and that, if you leave anything, and this is what I'm taking out of this episode, is the belief in people. We have to remember how to do that. It's larger than hockey. It's larger than sport. We have to learn to believe in each other again. It starts with trust, Tom, as you said, and then the ability to make yourself vulnerable to each other. And that's where true strength, at least mentally, comes from. And that is the future if we want to win together. I didn't mean it to make it sound that poetic, but it did. So, Tom, again, thank you so much for giving us an hour of your time today, for being here. This was phenomenal.
This was amazing. Amazing.
Thanks for the invitation, guys. You're doing great work. Keep it up. You're right on target. Rock solid, man.
Thank you very much. And that's going to do it for this episode of Win Championship Trades for Life, which is powered by Pivotal Moments. Once again, you can learn more about the organization and our channel Grit at pivotalmoments.org for more inspirational, entertaining, and most important, educational content about mental fitness and mental health. For Tom Renney and JB Spizo, I'm Lee Elias. Thanks so much for joining us. Make sure to keep an eye out for more episodes soon, wherever podcasts can be heard. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time on Win.